What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers, talking NBA playoffs today. Hope you had a great week, and I appreciate you joining me. Don't forget to subscribe and share this. Let's get into it. What is the point of playoffs in sports? Crowning a champion, yes, but how do you get there? Should entertainment value and excitement be prioritized, or should you actually try to find the best team? Of all the major sports playoffs we have, the NBA system is thought to be the best at doing the latter. It doesn't have the randomness of a single elimination tournament like March Madness, or even baseball where they play 8 million regular season games, then switch to a best of 5 divisional series setup. But while we are more likely to find the actual best team in the NBA, that team doesn't overlap with the best regular season team nearly as much as you would think. In fact, since 99 and 2000, when Cash Money Records took over, the team with the best regular season record has won the NBA title just 7 times. Turns out there are a lot of different factors and obstacles at play once you get to the playoffs, from injuries to matchups to how the game is officiated and so on and so forth. A 1 seed is nice, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can expect to see you in the finals, much less holding the trophy. So let's rank all of the teams in the playoffs by their actual chances of winning the championship. We're going to use logic, taking into account matchups, injuries, playing style, etc. And also, since we are NBA fans, we'll set logic aside at some points. For instance, just because a team is ranked number 1 doesn't necessarily mean their first round opponent will be ranked 14th. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Brandon, there are 16 teams in the playoffs. Yes, you're right. But there's not even a full 24 hours between the 8 seeds being decided and the start of the playoffs. Looking at the potential 8 seeds, I'm not seeing how they won't be ranked at the bottom. So since that knowledge and ranking is relatively inconsequential compared to the rest of what I'm about to give you, I'd rather just move along without it. Also, you may have noticed episodes are coming out random days. The reason for that is to help me get stuff out when it's topical. Evergreen episodes may still drop on Monday, but I think switching it up is going to help me cover more. All right, let's get into the rankings. Number 14 in the power rankings. We're jumping into the controversy right off the bat. It's your 3 seed in the East, the Milwaukee Bucks. Look, I could just say this is a team with high expectations in the playoffs whose head coach is Doc Rivers and move on because you all would understand, but there are several other factors at play here. First of all, yes, having Doc Rivers as your coach come playoff time isn't great. Hell, it wasn't great during the regular season this year. This team started 30-13 under Adrian Griffin, despite it not always looking pretty and the players apparently hating him. Then Dirty Mac and Doc took over and they limped to a 17-19 record under him. It gets even worse as they're expected to be without Giannis for at least some of their first round series due to a calf injury. At InStreetClothes on Twitter does a good job of talking about NBA injuries, and according to him, the average time missed due to a calf strain is 17 days. That would put Giannis at a Game 4 return if everything goes well, and as we all saw when KD had a similar injury his last season with the Warriors, there's a risk of an Achilles tendon rupture that goes along with it. On top of that, you also have Dame nursing an injury to his adductor that he said has been limiting him. That affects your ability to move laterally, which isn't great news for someone who already struggles a ton on defense. And Dame just flat out hasn't played to his standard this season regardless of injury. His shooting started to improve some post All-Star break, but not nearly enough to make up for his issues on the defensive end. He's just not impacting games positively in the way we've come to expect from him. He's also been especially bad against their first round opponent, the Indiana Pacers. They haven't played in a while, but the Bucks are just 1-4 against Indiana this season, with Dame shooting 32% overall and 27% from 3 in those games. So Doc Rivers as your coach, plus a team that hasn't looked comfortable all season, plus your star missing time and your second most talented player limited in effectiveness due to multiple reasons, equals a pretty weak title contender. I almost feel bad for him, so I won't even bring up Thanasis. Coming in at number 13, we have the 4 seed out of the West, the Los Angeles Clippers. They had a hell of a season, finishing 51-31 despite that slow start when they were working James Harden into the mix. Unfortunately, the health issues we've come to expect from them finally showed up just in time for the postseason. This is a team that goes as far as Kawhi can take them. It's no surprise that their great year coincides with him playing in his most games since he was in a Spurs uniform. And while he hasn't been Finals MVP Kawhi, he's been close enough to where you started to believe that this team could make some postseason noise. Unfortunately, his knee issues have flared up once again, and he hasn't played since March 31st. The Clippers are saying he's going to play, but they aren't always forthcoming with injury info. And even if he does play, how effective will he be? When will it flare up again? Then James Harden missed some time last month due to a shoulder injury on his shooting arm, and he hasn't been the same since he's come back, shooting just 36% from the field and 27% from three. He's also been dealing with a foot problem. This is a team that's trending in the wrong direction with both their health and their play, certainly because their health is affecting their play, and they are facing a team in the first round in the Dallas Mavericks that is one of the hottest teams in the league right now. Just all kinds of bad luck injury and matchup wise for the Clippers in this one. It's shitty because we got a glimpse of what they can be while also being reminded of why it most likely will never come to fruition. Number 12 is the Los Angeles Lakers. Looked like they were going to blow out the Pelicans in the play-in. They looked like they were headed for an embarrassing loss, then finally pulled it out because Zion unfortunately got injured and AD and D'Lo came up with some big plays in the clutch. And look, if you don't like that kind of wild inconsistently in a single game, then you don't like Lakers basketball. They've been one of the better teams post All-Star break, going 17-9, thanks in large part to their offense. All in all, a good season. I had very little faith in D'Angelo Russell headed into the year, but he's been incredible, even engaged on defense. And AD has pretty quietly played in a career high number of games while also grabbing a career high 12.6 rebounds a game and providing his usual elite defense. And what can you say about LeBron? Obviously lost a step or two, but can still show you that he's LeBron James, which is incredible since he's been doing this since Stringer Bell was a real estate investor. I badly want to believe in this team because I'm a weak man driven by emotion, but let's be for real. Defensively, they are inconsistent, to put it kindly. Darvin Ham doesn't have a great feel for in-game adjustments or rotations, and they have to play the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Not only is Denver the defending champs, but they also feature the one player who AD cannot defend in Nikola Jokic. That's a big reason why they swept the players in the regular season and last year's playoffs. As an East Coast Laker fan, the good news is they won't be messing up my sleep schedule too much this year, but we do need to have a conversation about them in the off season. The Cleveland Cavaliers are in the 11th spot. This team had a 17-1 stretch in the middle of the season that had Donovan Mitchell in the MVP conversation. Unfortunately, they figuratively and literally limped to the finish line, going just 12-17 post All-Star break, thanks to all kinds of health issues. That they managed to hang on to the 4 seed is a testament to how impressive that midseason stretch was, but Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley each missed at least 25 games. When Garland did play, he didn't look like the same guy who was an all-star a couple years ago, and I imagine that was due to those injury issues. He did show flashes of trending in the right direction as the season ended, but not enough to where you could definitively say he's back. A lot of off-the-court noise around this team too about Coach JB Bickerstaff's job and whether or not Donovan Mitchell will be here next year. Kind of a shitstorm of different things that are going to make advancing far hard, including playing my number 10 team, the Orlando Magic, in the first round. 2 things are certain about this series. It will be a defensive struggle, and you will have to watch it on NBA TV. This goes to show you how just because teams look similar on paper doesn't mean the feelings around them are. Orlando finished a game behind Cleveland for the 5 seed, but I like them more for a number of reasons moving forward. First, they've been great post All-Star break at 17-10. Secondly, this was a team that struggled with injury problems last year, but have been healthier this year. And more importantly, they're healthy now. This was their best season since Dwight Howard left, and they're just a young, hungry team that's going to make you suffer for every basket. They finished second in defensive rating this season, and in Jalen Suggs, they have one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Not only does he defend like his life depends on it, but he also has a way of getting under people's skin. He also upped his 3-point shooting percentage to just a shade under 40%. Paolo Banchero isn't the most efficient guy in the league, but he does a great job of making things happen offensively. And honestly, defending the way they do gives them a lot of leeway on that side of the ball. Their games won't be pretty, but I think they will have entertainment value simply because of how much they grind. I'm not expecting them to stick around past the second round, but this will be a great experience for a young team and a nice way to introduce themselves to the world. My number 9 team, the Indiana Pacers, introduced themselves to everyone during the in-season tournament. A streaky team thanks in large part to having the best offense in the league along with one of the worst defenses. They did have to survive a Tyrese Halliburton injury that's made him less effective the second half of the season. However, he's starting to look more like himself recently, and if he's giving them anything close to what he did in the in-season tournament, they're going to be able to win some games. Pascal Siakam came over mid-season and has fit in offensively pretty well, but that's not particularly hard in this offense. I think they were expecting him to bring a little bit more on the defensive side of things, but lack of defense is contagious. This team is ranked this highly because A, their best players appear to be mostly healthy, and B, they're matched up with a team they owned in the regular season who is also missing their best player in the Milwaukee Bucks. But as much as I love offense, I don't believe in them to go any further than winning this series. They'd be a couple spots lower if other teams were healthier. This is just not a playing style that's sustainable in the playoffs. They've given up 150 points 4 times this year. That's embarrassing. They have a lot of great young pieces, but at some point, you have to stop the other team from scoring. The Minnesota Timberwolves come in at number 8. I thought they'd fall off dealing with the cat injury, but they kept pace surprisingly well, finishing at 56-26 for the 3rd seed in the West. A lot of that is due to the fact that unlike the Pacers, they defend their asses off. First in the league in opponent scoring and defensive rating, Rudy Gobert has returned to Defensive Player of the Year form, and that helps erase any issues on that end of the court. But pretty much everyone on this team can defend well when they want to. Naz Reid has been a revelation off the bench. Mike Conley is still steady despite being older than me. And while I'd like Anthony Edwards to consistently lock in more, he's had another great year and progressed. Plus, they got Cat back. Now, how back is he? He only played 2 games after missing a month with a meniscus injury, and he didn't exactly set the world on fire as he was working his way back into game shape. They held on without him, but they need him to be at full strength if they have any real hope of making a run. Especially since they drew quite possibly the worst first-round matchup of any higher seed in the Phoenix Suns. Minnesota was 0 for 3 against Phoenix, and it was all bad. They lost every game by double digits, and Edwards couldn't make anything happen, shooting just 31% from the field and 27% from 3 for just over 14 points per game in their 3 matchups, well below his season average of 26. I'll talk more about the Suns in a bit, but they essentially negate Minnesota's strength, defense, particularly Gobert's, by utilizing 3 of the best wing scorers in the league. You get Gobert playing drop coverage in their pick and rolls, and they might mid-range Minnesota to death. If they do somehow survive this series, they're most likely looking at a matchup against the Nuggets in round 2, which presents similar issues defensively with Jamal Murray. Remember when he went nuclear back in the bubble against the Jazz? Guess who Utah's defensive anchor was? Rudy Gobert. So this one was a tough balance of all the factors because they are a good team, but they drew a miserable matchup and they have the cat injury stuff. All things considered, a middle-of-the-road playoff team. The Philadelphia 76ers are coming in at number 7, very high for a 7 seed, so what's the deal? Obviously, getting Joel Embiid back from injury makes a huge difference. He was playing MVP level ball, and they were on track to be anywhere from the 2nd to 4th seed in the East. They played 500 ball after he went down to make the play-in and held on to beat the Heat for the 7th seed. This has been the year of Tyrese Maxey. His hot start let them move on from James Harden, and his growth was accelerated when Embiid was out. The fact they didn't fall apart completely after losing one of the best players in the league who was putting up 35 a night shows you exactly how good Maxey can be. They have some nice pieces. Kelly Oubre has shown he's more than just an empty stats guy on a bad team. Buddy Hield came over from the Pacers mid-season and will provide 3-point shooting and teeth. You know how I feel about Kyle Lowry, but he's actually been been relatively effective since they picked him up off the waiver market, hitting 40% of his threes. I would actually have this team even higher if they were a little bit more proven in the playoffs and I wasn't concerned about Embiid going down again. Now, the optimistic view is that all the time he missed will let him be fresher later in the playoffs, and they are in the East where it's possible to make a deep run. They do have a tough first round matchup with the Knicks, though. I'm expecting a really good series there. They haven't played each other with their current roster makeups yet. If they survive this series, then you're either looking at Bucks or Pacers round 2, both teams with a lot of issues. They also got rid of Doc Rivers and James Harden, who are the Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan of playoff disappointments. I wouldn't go full Jonte Porter expecting them to make the NBA Finals, but an Eastern Conference Finals run is not out of the question. On top of all that, they're also super hot, having won 9 straight, including that play-in game. Again, this first round matchup against New York is going to be hell for both teams, but it helps to have the best player in the series, and a healthy Embiid is that. Moving on to number 6, the Phoenix Suns. Acquiring Bradley Beal in the offseason was a bit confusing. They already had 2 of the best perimeter scorers in the league in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and Beal is always an injury concern. And true to form, he missed a lot of games to start the year and more around the All-Star break, but since returning to the lineup for good on March 2nd, he's really settled into his role in a big way, hitting 52 of his 100 attempts from 3. And this team finished 49-33 to get the 6th seed in the West in what was a pretty streaky year for them, but I think that streakiness had a lot to do with Beal and Booker missing time at various points of the season. This is a super talented team. The season Kevin Durant just had at age 35 is absolutely incredible. He carried this team when the other 2 were out. Their top end talent was never a concern, but depth was, and they've managed to cobble together some pieces to go along with their big 3. Much to everyone's dismay, Grayson Allen also had a fantastic year and earned a huge contract extension. Jusuf Nurkic doesn't put up the same scoring numbers that DeAndre Ayton did, but is a much better fit for this team because he doesn't pout, he can make plays, defend, and rebound. They had no trouble with their first round opponent, Minnesota, in the regular season, and I can't imagine things going any differently here. Their 2 best players, Durant and Booker, are battle-tested guys. They have the personnel to go against the Timberwolves. I don't know what Minnesota can do with them. This was the only team in the league Rudy Gobert averaged fewer than 10 boards against, grabbing just 7 a game in their 3 matchups. They're going to put him through absolute hell and try to play him off the court completely. I cannot stress how talented they are on offense. They can get out in transition and score, and also score pretty efficiently in the half court, which is crucial in the playoffs. I also think they're underrated on the defensive side of the ball. They're also better equipped for a potential second round matchup with the Nuggets. It was basically my turn, your turn between Booker and Durant on offense last season in that series, but Beal throws a 3rd option into the mix, and Nurkic is as good of an option to use on Jokic as anybody. Ayton was unplayable against him last year as he averaged a 35-point triple-double in 6 games. They had to turn to Jock Landale. I would have to imagine Nurk can do a little better than Jock. I wouldn't say I'm super confident about their chances against the Nuggets, but certainly more confident than last year. They can do a lot of different things on offense and just enough on defense. We'll see what happens, but they damn sure aren't a typical 6 seed. The New York Knicks come in at number 5. They are the 2 seed in the East and had their best season since 2012-2013, going 50-32. They went 17-10 post All-Star break, including winning their last 5 to get that 2 seed when other teams were trying to duck a potential matchup with the 76ers, so I respect them for going for it. Jalen Brunson somehow managed to improve on last season's performance. He feels like a bigger, better version of that peak Isaiah Thomas season he had for the Celtics in 2016-2017. He can operate in the paint, shoots 40% from 3, and can make plays. This is a good team, and they've had a great season. They would rank higher if not for the injury to Julius Randle. Julius hasn't been fantastic in the playoffs, especially not last year, but they need a consistent second scorer beside Jalen, and Randle was the best option. Dante DiVincenzo and OG Anunoby, who came over midseason from the Raptors, have alternated filling that void, but I have to see it to believe it that they can do it consistently at a high level in the postseason. Dante's averaged 20 points a game since February, and if that's who he's going to be, then they're in fantastic shape. but can he do that in a 7-game series when the opponent is game planning to not let him do that? We'll see. I'm also a little worried about their post play. Isaiah Hartenstein, is he black? Is he white? You be the judge. I will say he's not a real threat to score, and neither is Mitchell Robinson. They both make up for that defensively, but is Robinson healthy again after missing significant time with an ankle injury? He did come back, and he looks like he'll be backing up Hartenstein, but they're going to need both of them at full strength in the first round against Joel Embiid. It's tough. That's who they got in the first round since the 76ers aren't a typical 7 seed, but if they survive that, then I don't hate their chances against either an Indiana team that can't defend or a Bucks team who may not have full-strength Giannis. Either way, they've had a fantastic year overall, and the NBA feels more exciting when the Knicks are good. The number 1 seed in the West, the Oklahoma City Thunder, come in at number 4. Amazing season for them, and this is more about what the teams ahead of them are doing right than anything in particular that's wrong with the Thunder. 17 more wins than last year, second in net rating, MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Rookie of the Year candidate in Chet Holmgren, and one of the best second-year players in the league in Jalen Williams. They're clearly headed in the right direction and remind me of that 2010-2011 Thunder team that made a run to the Western Conference Finals before losing to the Mavericks. What are the question marks? Experience has got to be number 1. I believe SGA and Lou Dort are the only players still on the roster since the last time they went to the playoffs. SGA wasn't the guy then, he is now. How will that look, especially if the whistle isn't going his way? Also, as we've talked about most of the season, Holmgren is great, but they need more post bulk. Maybe I'm just old, but someone has to be able to hold their own in the paint, especially since you would think they'll probably have to play Denver at some point. They're in the top 4, so clearly a conference final run is not out of the question. I could even see them making the finals, but it just feels like we're a year early here. Based on seeding, this might be a shocker, but the number 5 seed Dallas Mavericks are the number 3 team in my power rankings. 50 wins for a 5 seed shows just how tough the West is, but they are even better than their record suggests, and they're also red hot, finishing the year 16-2 before resting everyone the last 2 games. This is the Mavs team a lot of us expected last season when they traded for Kyrie, so how have they finally made it work? Well, obviously, the main thing is Luka and Kyrie have figured out how to play together and developed a great chemistry. Kyrie is one of the best number 2 scoring options in the league. He has all of the talent and ability of a number 1 option, but is able to slide into that number 2 spot without disrupting what he or his teammates are best at. He only had 20 games with the team last year and was in and out of the lineup to start the season, but before they shut it down for the playoffs, he was healthy and playing and doing so at the high level we expect to see from him. Speaking of playing at a high level, if you want to make a deep run in the playoffs, it helps to have one of the best offensive players on the planet, which they have in Luka Doncic. Just when you think he's maxed out offensively, he puts up a career high in assists at 9.8 and points per game with a league-leading 33.9. He also hit a career-high 38% from 3 on the highest volume in his career. The Luka conversation, especially after last season, was how effective is his playing style? Is it conducive to winning? Is he playing that way out of necessity because the team isn't good? Or is it the only way he can play? Can they win like this? Well, it feels like we've gotten some answers this season. In addition to healthy Kyrie, the team also drafted Derek Lively II and traded for Daniel Gafford mid-season, and Luka is firmly at the top of most MVP conversations. There are few players more dangerous when it comes to playmaking off the dribble and in pick and rolls than Kyrie and Luka, so giving them 2 big men who can finish like Lively and Gafford is basically a cheat code. Lively made 74.7% of his shots, and if you think that's incredible, and you should, then how would you describe Gafford's 78% during his time with the team? That includes a streak of 33 consecutive shots made without a miss. The all-time record is 35, held by who else? Wilt Chamberlain. Defensively, we know Luka and Kyrie aren't going to make all defense anytime soon, but Gafford and Lively are as good at protecting the rim as they are at finishing on the other end, which covers up for those weaknesses a bit. My major concern is Lively's health. He's missed a significant amount of time, including all of April with a knee injury. He was a full participant in practice heading into the playoffs, but they need him to be healthy and at his full effectiveness. He also just lost his mom to cancer, so thoughts and prayers to him. Now, not only are the Mavericks on fire at the right time, but I love them in all of their potential matchups. They were just 1-2 against their first round opponent, the Clippers, in the regular season, but didn't play them with this full roster, including PJ Washington, who came over from Charlotte. Also, as I talked about when discussing the Clippers, that's a team heading in the opposite direction with even bigger injury concerns. Past that, they beat the Thunder in their only matchup with all of their current pieces and the Nuggets. And we've seen that Luka is one of the ultimate ceiling raisers when he gets to the playoffs, adding the best pieces around him he's ever had, and this team is going to give opponents hell. This is a title contender. The number 2 team is the 1 seed in the East, the Boston Celtics. They have been the best team in the league from wire to wire, far and away the best record at 64-18, number 1 in offensive rating, net rating, and number 3 in defensive rating. Also led the league in three-pointers made and attempted, an absolute juggernaut that is loaded with talent and depth and plays in the weaker of the 2 conferences. So in theory, their path to the finals should be easier. It's obvious to see why they are a lot of people's favorites. So why are they number 2 on this list? Well, that stat about the teams with the best record not winning the title feels like it was custom made for this group. They have almost the exact same issues that have stopped them from winning all the other years they've been at the top of the league. They did get better by adding Kristaps and Drew Holiday. They still have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and Derek White played out of his mind, but as great as they were this year, they still have fallen victim to the same silly-ass Celtics collapses that we have come to know and love. The main issue for me is their reliance on the three-pointer. Again, they led the league in attempts. The gap between them and the team with the second most attempts is greater than the gap between the team with the second most attempts and the team with the 10th most attempts. As we've seen in past playoff performances, relying on the 3 in a sample size as small as a 7-game series can mean disaster if everyone goes cold at the wrong time. And you would only have to go cold 4 times to head to Cancun. Their most talented player is Jason Tatum. He's one of the best players in the league, but he also finds ways to disappear in big moments. It doesn't even have to be a full game no-show, although he has those as well, but he also has games where he'll be rolling, then the fourth quarter hits and he's gone. That forces Jaylen Brown to step up, and while he has more of that bus driver mentality than Tatum, he has glaring holes in his game, particularly ball handling and decision making, that make him a less than ideal number 1 option. So you're left with 2 talented but flawed stars and a bunch of good role players, and they all rely on the most volatile shot in the game. And look, that could be enough to win the title. I mean, their regular season success isn't a fluke, and they are number 2 here. But what would be more shocking, them winning it all or them choking? The fact that this is even a question for a team with this much talent that has been running through the league is why they aren't number 1. That honor, surprise, surprise, goes to the Denver Nuggets, number 2 seed in the West. Felt a little bit like they were coasting, but they actually have a better record than last year, going from 53 wins to 57. They were 21-6 post All-Star break. And look, they still have Jokic, who had another MVP season, still have Murray, who battled injuries but appears to be healthy now. Speaking of health, MPJ has never uttered a smart word, and I hate him for it, but he was uncommonly healthy this year, playing in 81 games. His previous career high was 62. Assuming you get anywhere close to playoff Jamal Murray and everyone remains healthy, who do you have over them? In the West, Lakers in the first round? No. Suns or T-Wolves round 2? Suns are better than last year, but still got to think Denver is favored over either of those 2 teams. Then we're talking OKC, Dallas, or whatever is left of the Clippers. Certainly will be a good series, particularly the OKC or Dallas one, but we've seen Denver do it. I just don't know how you stop Jokic from leading this group back to the finals. It feels like their floor is the conference finals and their ceiling is obviously repeating as champion. And it's hard to repeat, but this team is set up as well as any to pull it off. They have their core, their health, and the league is right in between teams whose windows just closed and teams whose windows haven't quite opened yet. So there you have it. Looking forward to seeing how this all plays out. This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Like, subscribe, rate, review, share, all that good stuff. I appreciate you. Hope you have a great week, and I will catch you later.